Memphis is the home of the blues, rock and roll, and Earle Farrell.
From the Collierville Square to the mighty Mississippi, the Earle Farrell for Memphis show is all about good things that happen across the Bluff City and the people who make Memphis cool.
The Earle Farrell for Memphis show is made possible by our title sponsor, Southern Security Federal Credit Union, and by Kathy Thurman Edwards, State Farm Insurance.
Plus, Diane Kimbrough, Lady Di, your insurance PI. Also by Dive Shop and Dive Ventures nationwide. Jim Karras Chevrolet with George Gully. Napa Cafe Memphis and Glenda Hastings. Phoenix Unequaled Home Entertainment. For Memphis Magazine. The Live at the Garden Concert Series. And the Orpheum Theater Group Memphis. Thank you to all the sponsors for making this possible.
And now, coming to you from Lansky Brothers, Clothier to the King, inside the world-famous Peabody Hotel, with the heart of a cowboy and Memphis in his soul. Ladies and gentlemen, here's your host, Earle Farrell.
And thank you very much, and welcome in to Lansky's in the world-famous Peabody Hotel. Joining us today as my guest is a good friend, a former work associate, George Larrimore. Welcome to the show, George.
Thank you very much, Earl. And I noticed you didn't say how long we've been friends, because it's been a year or two.
It has. I've been in Memphis. I moved here in '78. We met shortly after that. It was like 80, 81, something like that.
No, we met probably 79. It might have been
the year
78. You and I were both working at Channel 3 at the time.
Yeah.
So we were kind of starting out together, kind of.
And you'd previously been at Channel 5 before that.
Channel 13 before that, and Channel 5 later.
Wow.
Couldn't hold a job.
You're like me. I've worked for 3, 5, 13. I did stuff for Channel 10, PBS, which you're doing now.
Yeah.
The only station I never worked for was Channel 24. Have you ever done anything with
Not yet.
So
let's offer them something.
Or save them.
We could have a club. You and I could have a club, and we'd probably be the only members, you know.
Well, it's like what Woody Allen said, I don't want to be a member of any club that wants me.
That's right.
But you've had a great career. You worked here for many years. You were a producer here, always a great writer. We were talking before we came on about how much we both love working at Channel 3, WREG here in Memphis, because of the people.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a rarity when you get a whole bunch of people working together, and you got no problems with any of them.
That was a time, I was thinking about this earlier today. The late 70s was a time of such change in the television business, because when you and I started, people were still shooting film.
Yeah.
The news was still on film. And when I was at Channel 13, we had one video camera. And when I started at Channel 3, we had never done a live shot. Now, you see a live shot 10 times on the morning news.
Yeah.
And I remember we went downtown one night when Denise Sims was hosting the weekend newscast. And we took the brand new live truck down to Beale Street just to say we're doing a live shot. And there wasn't anything to it except that it was live and we were on Beale Street to try it out. But it was technology changing so much of what we were doing. But you're right. There were really, truly a great bunch of people at Channel 3. And I think it's safe to say that I learned more working there than at any other place, because I was the first producer they ever hired. And we did 2 shows a day at 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock news. And then Jerry Tate and I wrote the show. We were talking about Jerry earlier. And when you have to do it, you either get good at it or you quit. And so Jerry and I churned out the scripts for both of those shows every day. And I learned you cannot fool around with this. You've got to think and do right now. And if you want it to be good, you got to learn how to make it be good and also get it done. And that was a real lesson.
I do remember at the time that it was very hard to beat Channel 5. They had more resources. They had better equipment than we did. And John Powell was my news director who hired me. And I remember him standing there at the console of the 3 televisions and the 3 main stations in town, smoking a cigarette and blowing the smoke out. He goes, well, you can't win them all. I'm going, yeah, but John, we don't win any of them. But we all, that was our goal every day, to just go out and beat Channel 5.
Yeah, that's it. And it was a high bar. It really was. We were talking again earlier about Jerry Tate. I have such fond memories of working with Jerry Tate. And he was such a straight-laced guy. And I was not quite as straight-laced as he was. And we sat across from each other, closer than you and I are sitting now. And we started, you have to get on the same page with someone. They have to see how you work and how they work. And you learn to work together or you struggle with it. And we got to figure it out. And we couldn't have been more different as people. But we figured it out, and we came to really like each other. And I love Jerry Tate. He's a wonderful human being. But I want to say this. I introduced Jerry Tate to soap operas, okay? Because we watched the afternoon feed on CBS when the news came in on CBS.
Right.
And right after the feed was Guiding Light. And I loved Guiding Light because there was this redhead named Evie McFerrin on Guiding Light.
Always a woman.
And she had lost her memory somehow. What do you call that when you can't?
Amnesia.
Amnesia. She, of course, had amnesia since it was a soap. And Jerry just, and after about a month or two, Jerry's turning it on. And I go tell my wife, I said, Jerry Tate is watching Guiding Light. I love this. Anytime I talk with him, I say, yeah, you still watch Guiding Light, as long as it was on the air.
Something I didn't know about you when we worked together was that you were a Marine, are a Marine. You're always a Marine.
Always.
You also went to Vietnam. I guess it probably because we had Larry Plant was a tank commander in Vietnam, and some other people I knew that were in the military, but it was still so fresh. Right. I mean, this is 78, 79. You were there in 68, 69. 10 years is not a long time.
Not a long time at all.
And it still was not a popular war with anybody, not the people who went there, not the people who didn't want them to go there in the first place. But it was when I learned that you had been a Marine, it makes a lot of sense. It's because I've never met a braggadocious Marine. In fact, they downplay anything they do, and I think that goes back to the previous generation, the greatest generation in World War II, that kind of passed on. But it was I'd read where you said that the Marine Corps changed you more than anything else you've ever done in your life.
Yeah, I went in because I didn't know what I was doing. Hadn't done very well in high school. I had some learning problems. I really couldn't do math. And so I struggled with that, and my parents were unhappy with me. And long story short, I thought, to get my dad to feel okay about what I'm trying to do with my life, which I didn't know what that was, to get him to feel okay, join the military, because he was in the military like many of our fathers in World War II. Yeah. And so I joined the Marine Corps. And from that point on, he just kind of, said, okay, that's fine. I'm okay with you because you've done this. And that really was all I needed. But it gave me a kind of a sense of, I belong to something. I always tell my kids, I've got two sons, and I've told them all their lives. I said, that's my frat. I said, never was in a frat. I said, this is my frat. The Marine Corps is my frat. And I have a hat with USMC on it. I still wear, and I'm 2,000 years old. But I'm very, very proud of having been a part of it. And when I was in boot camp, I remember this like it was yesterday.
Where'd you go to boot camp?
Parris Island.
I went to Parris Island, but only for a week.
On vacation?
No, actually, I went there on the invitation of the Marine Corps. They said, we've changed so much, and we don't yell at them anymore, which is a total lie. Right. We got there and went, I still ain't coming in and wearing the uniform here, but it was very enlightening going to Parris Island.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, you can't wait to leave. But the last day we were in boot camp, the drill instructor, they're okay in that last day. And the drill instructor walked up and down the squad bay, and he told everybody, he said, 6 months from now, you will pay anything, do anything to get out of the Marine Corps. You will hate it worse than you've ever hated anything in your life. You will do anything to get out of it. He said, but 20 years from now, you'll be walking down the street, holding your kid's hand. It'll be the 4th of July, and the band will come along, and they'll play the Marines hymn, and a tear will come to your eye, and a chill will run up and down your spine, and it happens every single time. And I'll tell you how I knew I married the right woman, and my wife's name is Judy Card. She knew how important it was to me. And the Marine Corps birthday is November the 10th, 1775. And every November the 10th, she gets up and says, happy birthday to me, and sings the Marines hymn. And I said, you had me right there. You had me from the halls of Montezuma.
Well, it is an incredible organization, and I wasn't a frat, and I can tell you there's still some brothers that if I saw today, I would slap on the back of the head, because they did not treat us kindly. In fact, it was much more harassment probably than you went through in the Marines. But it is an incredible organization, and all the people I've ever known, met, and gotten to know that were in the Marine Corps were all stand-up people and very proud of being part of the Corps.
Yeah.
And that's why they say you're a Marine for life, because
absolutely.
there is no ex-Marines out there. And I hear them all the time saying, if you need me, call me.
That's right.
And they would go, look what they're doing in Texas right now with a huge disaster with the flooding down there.
Right.
There are people that are coming, former military, former law enforcement, first responders, because it's such a heartbreaking thing to have to cover. And I mean, we both covered news and all kinds of stuff for years, and nobody ever really talks about the news media having PST, but it certainly is there.
Yeah.
You learn not to look at a lot of stuff because you'll never get it out of your head again.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going on with that right now.
Yeah, I was thinking about you this morning because I knew you were from Texas. I remember that. And it is just so tragic, and you wish people could just say, let's help people somehow feel better, or respond in a way that is just makes them feel like we've got them, or we were thinking about them, because there's just so little that you can say.
You can't fix it. You cannot fix it. And those people that have lost their children, they never get over it. John Tigert and Pat, I got to be really close to. He lost two sons in their youth. One just like 12 years old, another one in his 20s. And I asked him one time, do you ever get over, this was in his 80s, I said, do you ever get over losing a child, John? He goes, never. He said, I cry every day over both those boys and what they missed and what we missed in life together.
I think, thinking about Memphis, okay, think about Memphis and thinking about the police officers who work so hard in this city. There's been a lot of criticism. This is a completely different topic, but a criticism of the way some police officers have worked and acted in this town, and that's no secret to anyone. But the thing that I try to remember is that there's any police officer is if that police officer is at your front door, it might be something that's happened that's the worst day of your life, but it's not the worst day of their life. It's a day that they live every single day. And we have to remember that what they are under, the pressure that they are under, then they are trying to do the right thing. Sometimes they don't. We don't all ever do the right thing. But police officers, you got to accept that they have a really, really difficult job. And as first responders, as you're talking about what's happening in Texas. So.
Well, and you're always the sum total of your life experiences. And I think that's one thing you always brought to wherever you were working. You worked here. And then you went to Pennsylvania after Channel 3?
No, I was in Palm Springs, Florida. No, West Palm Beach, Florida, briefly. And then I left here and went to Oklahoma City, but I was moving west. So, Oklahoma was west of here. But I really wanted to get to California. And so I got to
Had you ever been out to California before?
I had been there a couple of times, yeah. I had been stationed at Camp Pendleton before I went to Vietnam.
Okay.
So I'd been to L.A.
Your last good trip before.
That's right. And I got out there for free that time. So, but I'd always wanted to go to L.A. and see if I could do something, and so I went, and it was a great experience. Just a life-changing experience for me.
Because you were just a boy from Mississippi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was it Marks? Is that where you grew up?
No, I grew up in. I always say I'm from Lake Cormorant, which Lake Cormorant, if anybody knows the Delta, it's when you cross the state line leaving Memphis. There's walls, then there's Lake Cormorant, neither of which is more than 300 people. And the reason that we called it our hometown is because that's where we drove over to get the mail. So, but
the biggest small town.
The biggest small. It was like 300 people. But my dad was a farmer, and my mother was a nurse. And so I learned a lot of things from both of them, and you learn a lot living in the country. You know how it is. We talked about that before. I always see it's an advantage to have started out living in the country rather than moving there later.
Well, I think because you learn all facets of life.
That's right.
You learn about animals, you learn about people, and usually if your folks were from the country, they started teaching about people before they started teaching about animals. And the thing you need to be wary of are other people, not the animals. They're just doing what they do.
And you learn about work.
Yes.
We talked about that again before we started. You learn about work because it's got to be done.
But you get to L.A. and you've got experience. You've worked in local news, but this is Hollywood. This is the big time. I mean, L.A.
Yeah.
How did you go about looking for a job?
Well, I knew a guy, oddly enough, a guy named Jack Chestnut. I don't know if you don't remember Jack. Jack was a little bit before your time. But Jack was a reporter at Channel 13. Jack Chestnut, by the way, and some people might argue this, but I think I know I'm correct in this. Jack Chestnut is the first person to go on the air and say that Elvis was dead.
Wow.
He was in the newsroom at Channel 13 over on Highland, and none of the talent was there. It was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so they hadn't gotten to work yet. None of the anchors had gotten to work yet. And we had a woman that was the assistant to the program director who was friends or family with someone in the sheriff's department. And there was a code that they issued when Elvis was in trouble. And she got a call from somebody in the sheriff's department that told her that Elvis was dead. And if you think about it, this was done with a complete lack of caution. The news director, Don Stevens, calls Chestnut into the room and says, get an orange jacket and put it on, which said Eyewitness News on the thing. And he says, it's what? He said, there's nobody here. You got to do it. You're the one who acts like a broadcaster. So they stick him in front of the camera, and Jack Chestnut, who's probably 27 years old, goes on and said Elvis Presley's dead. And the phone started ringing with people saying, no, you got to take that back. That cannot be true. That cannot be true. But so we at Channel 13 were the first ones to put it on television anyway. I don't know about radio. You might know about radio.
Well, in fact, we had Ron Olson and Karen Perrin on recently, which you did an in-depth interview with Ron not long ago for your show. And he said that they found about to somebody that knew somebody at the hospital and said they just brought Elvis in and he's dead.
Yeah.
He went on and did the first radio announcement. It is because it was Memphis.
Yeah.
And everybody had people you could cross-reference with and say, it's true. I was in Texas, and we heard about it. I said, it can't be true. I mean, he has no health problems. But nobody had really seen him unless he had gone to a concert because he hadn't been in news coverage or anything like that.
Right.
But having covered Elvis now for almost 50 years, never met the man, never saw him in concert, came here and knew he lived here and knew that about Graceland, but you start covering it. I don't know how you feel about Elvis, but I've slowly emerged as a huge fan of not just the artist but the man. Over the years, I've never heard anybody say anything bad about Elvis Presley.
Never. He loved his mother, he loved his aunt, his grandmother, he loved his parents, he loved the people that he ran into. Can I tell you an Elvis story?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so my mother was a nurse. My mother's name was Marjorie Larrimore, and she, a lot of the time, she was what they called then a private duty nurse, meaning you could hire her to be your nurse in the hospital, and that you were her only patient. And she would work for weeks at a time, and then she'd not work, and then somebody else would hire her. They hired her to be the nurse for Elvis's grandmother at the mansion. And so, now I'm in grade school, right, at Whitehaven, which is right down the street. And so my mother, she comes home from her first day at Elvis's house, and they told her where to park. She drove the car up the driveway. We had a 58 Chevy. Drove the car around the back, parked in the thing. And she goes to walk in the back of the house, and there's Elvis's Aunt Delta in the backyard with an apron, holding an apron like this, gathered the apron full of corn, and there are chickens in the yard.
Feeding the chickens.
She's throwing chicken to, and then when the Baz Luhrmann movie about Elvis came out, there it was.
They had it.
The woman feeding the chickens in the backyard.
Wow.
So but my mother told us that, and she was just so surprised that, got their country people, and they really were. They were just. They were 2 years out of living in public housing, and they were 5 or 6 years out of living in Tupelo, Mississippi. And that's one of the things I think that made people love Elvis so much, is because he was so real. There wasn't a phony thing about Elvis.
No, and in fact, when you go back and you look at his life and the things he loved doing, he was like a big kid.
Yeah,
because he didn't have any of the things that most of us grew up with.
Right.
And so when he did buy things, he bought motorcycles, go-karts, neat cars, And he bought them for all of his friends, the guys that took care of him. I mean, it was just a big pack of friends is what they were.
Yeah.
There's somebody doing a book right now on a nurse that may have been after your mother. It may have been your mother. She was listed on his tombstone.
Right.
Are you aware of her?
No, I'm not. That was not my mother. My mother was only there for, probably a couple of months.
Because this woman came in and was literally the private nurse there at Graceland for the rest of his life.
Right.
And then when I got here, and Elvis had already passed in August, I got here in January, and the pal goes, go out to Graceland, it's his birthday, and see if anybody shows up. This is the first year after he died. So I got there, I called back on the radio and the news unit, and I said, they're here.
Yeah.
And they've been coming back ever since. But I was one of the first crews allowed to go inside Graceland, and Todd Morgan was the head of PR then. And we did an interview with Elvis's cook, who's his cook for many years, and in the kitchen. And then Todd said, I got to go, and she's got to go. And Steve Hutchison and I did the interview. He said, I'm going to leave you here. I'll ask you, don't go upstairs. You can go anywhere on this floor or down in the basement to the pool room, TV room. Just don't go upstairs. I said, you got it. And everybody that's ever told that to, they said, well, you went upstairs, didn't you? I said, no.
Yeah.
You tell somebody you're not going to do something, you are going to do. You do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
And they all like, well, you should have gone. I said, no. You just don't do that. And I was talking to Jack Soden's wife. She was on the other day, Leanne, and she was telling me that she made Jack think she was going to go up there and open Elvis's door one time. He says, don't do it. She said, so none of us have ever been there.
Yeah.
Just only immediate family members have ever been up in the bedroom. Let's go back to you getting to Hollywood, because being from Memphis says something to anybody that says you say, I'm from Memphis.
Yeah.
Because I've talked to people who've been on American Idol, and I say, when you tell them you're from Memphis, what do they say? They go, that's not fair. Right. They actually think that people in Memphis have something going for them that nobody else in the country does, and that if you're from Memphis, and I've often said this too, the people that come from Memphis, that are, whether they're entrepreneurs, musicians, whatever, there's got to be something in the water. Look how many incredible people that have come out of Memphis, Tennessee, for no other association of any kind that you can tape together, but they do great things.
It's being from Memphis when you're not in Memphis is exotic, and I think it still is. It certainly was, at that time. And the first real job I had at KNBC, which was a TV station. They said, well, you get to know people, and they said, what do you like? I said, I love music. I said, I grew up on all kinds of music, and I know a lot about it. And so they started letting me, interview people and talk to people. And I did an interview with George Strait, whom they had never heard of. George Strait. I said, George Strait is a giant.
He's big.
He was a difficult interview because he's shy. But I got to interview Brian Wilson. It's made me think about, Brian Wilson when he passed just a few weeks ago. But it was a lovely man, but he was in the middle of his struggles. And we had to, it was so hard to piece together a piece out of the interview because he just couldn't put words together very well. And his Dr. Landy, the guy who was kind of his guy that was taking care of him, called me like a couple of days later. He said, oh God, what a great interview. And I said, what? Because he just really couldn't. Brian just couldn't. He was very nice, very kind, and trying to answer, but he just
couldn't get the words out.
He had mental health problems, and he just couldn't do it. But what he said, we made it work. But I'm just this thrilled to this day that I got the chance to sit down and talk to Brian Wilson. I mean, how often can you say that? So that, having done that at KNBC, that's how I ended up getting to Entertainment Tonight, because, again, I had some experience. I was a little bit older than most people, and going back to the Marine Corps, the guy who hired me saw that I was a veteran, so I was a Vietnam veteran, and he hired me. I'm convinced of it. And they put me to work, and they assumed, and you'll understand this, a lot of people there assumed, well, you're from Tennessee, you must like country music. I said, no, I'm from Memphis. It's a difference.
Yeah, it is.
200 miles away, and it's got a twang, and this is different. What we do down here is different. But it took me a long way because I understood music, and I loved it because it was part of me. You grow up in Memphis. If you're listening to the radio, you just get it, you absorb it, and when I was a child, I listened to WLOK, WDIA, and WLOK was a black station, and played blues and R&B and soul music, and that's really what I started out listening to because that was what was there.
And it was popular then.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
at the
absolutely.
same time, I'm in Odessa, Texas, and West Texas. And in those days, top 40 radio meant top 40, whatever the genre.
Right.
So
right.
it could be blues, it could be R&B, it could be rock and roll. There wasn't that much rock and roll.
Right.
So I grew up listening to B.B. King, listening to Al Green, all these people. When I get to college, all these guys from Dallas are there, and they're all going, everybody's in the dorms, we're listening to Memphis music.
Yeah.
And, of course, Chicago and all those stars, but the music coming out to the rest of the world, so much of it was coming out of Memphis,
Right.
Tennessee, and to end up moving here and actually meeting all these people that were still alive when I got here, Jerry Lee, Carl Perkins, Johnny Cash. I mean, they were all still here, and all these places, they're real places. When people come to visit Memphis, they go, well, this really exists, just like Lansky's and the Peabody.
And you can't overstate, in my opinion, you can't overstate the importance of the black artists and producers and writers and session people here to the black people who lived in this community, because they heard the music that they were listening to on the radio.
Yeah.
And they heard and knew that the rest of the world is listening to this music too, and they love it. It is a validation. Just like Elvis and Johnny Cash and Jerry Lee Lewis was a validation for people who liked, country music or rockabilly music. But it was a validation to people say, yes, this is what we hear and this is what we love. This is who we are.
And they all grew up very similarly.
Yeah.
And so they had nothing, and they came and said, we're going to go to Memphis and make music and try to make it. And they did. Mm-hmm. But like so many of them, you ask people, and I'm sure you have in your interviews over the years, when did you realize you'd made it? And I had the ones that were really smart say to me, the problem with that is you never reach that point. Mm-hmm. How do you know you've made it, You don't. Mm-hmm. There's another day tomorrow, and you gotta go do it again tomorrow.
That's right. That's right.
We're talking with George Larrimore. He's is a writer, film producer, a broadcaster, and we're going to talk more about his time in L.A. and working for the big entertainment shows at the time. So stay with us. We're going to check in with our sponsors right now, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Dawn Grader, President and CEO of Southern Security Federal Credit Union. We're the proud title sponsor of the Earle Farrell for Memphis show, coming to you live from Lansky's in the world-famous Peabody Hotel and celebrating all of the great things about our great city, Memphis, Tennessee.
Hi, I'm Glenda Hastings, owner of Napa Cafe, and I'm so proud to be part of the Earle Farrell for Memphis show, streaming live from Lansky's from the Peabody. We will be showcasing not only Napa Cafe, but some great restaurants around town. We look forward to seeing you.
Hi, everyone. It's Diane Kimbrough, Lady Di, your insurance PI. And I'm here to tell you about the new podcast that Earle Farrell from Memphis is doing. And we're doing it downtown live from the Peabody, which is behind me and next to the Rendezvous. And we're going to be talking all things Memphis, but we're also going to be talking about health insurance because that applies to everyone. And I can help you in every area. So I look forward for you listening to us and learning more about what we can do for you in Memphis and how I can help you with your health.
Hello, Memphis, Mid-South. And first, I'd like to thank you for visiting with Earle Farrell Memphis today. And we want to support him just like you do. I'm George Gully, one of the sales managers at Jim Carrey Chevrolet. We've been in business here in Memphis for over 75 years. I've been associated with the company for almost 25. And I'll help you find the right car, truck, or SUV here at not only our Chevy store, but also Buick, GMC, Nissan, Subaru. We can help you find that right car. Keep watching, Earl, and come see me. Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Kathy Thurman Edwards State Farm, and I'm so excited to be one of the sponsors for the Earle Farrell from Memphis show, broadcasting live from Lansky's at the Peabody. And I'll tell you all about what we've got going on at our office. Gift cards for quotes. No purchase necessary. I'm better looking than a lizard.
Hi, this is Randy Wright from the Dive Shop and Dive Ventures in Memphis. We've been in Memphis over 64 years teaching people to dive, snorkel, and swim. We'd love to have you come join us and have some fun. We're also a part of the Dive Ventures group with 18 locations across the country, stretched from Phoenix to Vienna, Virginia. Please give us a call. We'll be able to take care of you at 999 South Yates in Memphis, or call us at 901-763-DIVE.
Hi, I'm Brett Batterson, President and CEO of the Orpheum Theater Group in downtown Memphis. We are so pleased with our partnership with the Earle Farrell Show and very happy that he is broadcasting live from Lansky's at the historic Peabody Hotel. We're all here to make Memphis better.
Hi, my name is Jameson Totten, and I'm the director of Live at the Garden and the Radiance Amphitheater. And we're so excited for our 25th year of Live at the Garden here at the Memphis Botanic Garden. We've got a great lineup for you this season, so come on out.
Hi, I'm Olivia Wall, Director of Marketing and Communications for Memphis Botanic Garden and Live at the Garden. We've had Earle Farrell right along the way for the past 25 years, and we can't wait to talk more about the season this summer on the Earle Farrell for Memphis show.
So come out to Live at the Garden. Our first show's on June 21st.
Hi, my name is Scott Fueling. I'm president of Phoenix Communications here in Memphis. I'm really proud to support Earle Farrell's show, as was everybody else on the team. We love Memphis, and we love doing things to promote Memphis, and we can't wait for this to get started.
And welcome back. With us in studio is George Larrimore, who has been a veteran broadcaster. We got to work together in the late 70s, and he went on to much bigger and better things in Los Angeles, working with NBC there first. Then he got a job with Entertainment Tonight, which was, to me, still is the best entertainment show that has ever been out there, with Mary Hart and John Tesh.
John Tesh at the time,
yeah. And so, I mean, you knew who they were. You're there in L.A. What's it like? I mean, we often think, sitting here in Memphis, that everybody in New York is smarter than we are. Mm-hmm. Everybody in L.A. is smarter than we are. That's how come they're there. But in reality, there's a bunch of young people doing the same thing there that we were doing here in Memphis.
Right.
But you get there, and there's all these stars, and you see them everywhere you go, and you're in the biz.
You learn. You're always, can I get good enough to work at this level? Can I get good enough to go to the next step? You know how that goes.
Yeah.
And then you learn that you either you can or you got to figure out how to do it. But I was really lucky to have gotten on there, because they were looking for people, and as I said a minute ago, the guy recognized that I'm convinced. He never told me this, but I was convinced that the executive producer, this guy named Jim Van Messel, told me or hired me, and I think because I'd been in the Marine Corps, because there was nobody else in the building who was a veteran of any kind.
Isn't that amazing?
No, not a one. And they were all a lot younger, or a good bit younger than me, but they hired me as a producer to put stories together, and that's what I did. And I'd been doing that in news anyway, so I knew the tools. I had experience working with the tools. It wasn't like it was new. But then I started writing, and it was such a thrill. It was really a thrill for me, because my mother could watch. Here I'm doing a show, and my mom can watch, and there's my name on the screen.
Yeah.
I thought, well, this is just the best thing in the world. And but Entertainment Tonight was a real step up for me, and I really loved it. I loved the people, and I went to work the first day. And I wore a coat and tie, and I get there, and it's like 4:30 in the morning, because the show's done at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're on the Paramount lot at 4:30 in the morning, and I show up in a coat and tie, and I come in, and the guy's got his cigarettes rolled up in his sleeve, his T-shirt, and he looks me up and down like,
who are you?
Yeah, so I didn't wear a shirt and tie the next day, but they just throw you in there.
Yeah.
They throw you in there. There's no learning curve. Can you do this? Yeah, okay, do this. I need a minute and a half. I need you to do a minute 45 on this. They don't mean a minute 52. They mean a minute 45.
Now, were you field producing? Were you going out?
I was they had me just cutting pieces for the show. So I would take the tapes that somebody else shot and the clips and the research information and put it together. And you've got about 3 hours to do it. Then you go to an editor and you cut the piece together. And again, the show, because it goes on a satellite to stations around the country, it's got to be done. The show is done at 1 o'clock. That's the deadline. And you're going to make it or you won't be working there. It's just as simple as that.
And how many people on staff are we talking about? How many people like you?
There were over 100 people. There were probably 125 people, but they had a lot of different, there was hair and makeup people and style people and producers and directors and associate directors and editors and the talent and all that. But yeah, it was they had everything and they had all the people, unlike a lot of TV stations where you don't always have the right people to do the right job. They had the right people because it was a very successful and very profitable show, and it's produced by Paramount Pictures at the time. So, which I loved.
Just going to the Paramount lot.
Oh yeah,
I mean that's
really
big
great.
time. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's to a kid from Mississippi. You look out the window. I remember one day standing there looking out the window about 100 yards away, and there's Clint Eastwood walking down a fake New York street directing a scene. And New York Street is a bunch of buildings that look like New York, only they're covered with rubber, And there was a place that we parked. They called it the Tank. It's a parking place that you drive down into it and park your cars there. The reason they call it the Tank is they used it in that movie. I've forgotten what it was, but where Moses parts the Red Sea, they built it so
Ten Commandments.
Yes, the Ten Commandments, so they could part the Red Sea and get it on film. And so when they weren't full of water, we got to park there. So we parked there
in the Red Sea.
Yeah, and then one day I came to work. It's one of my favorite memories. I came to work and they were doing some movie about where these people went across a swamp in a boat. And the swamp was full of hippos, right? And they were dangerous killer hippos. So we had to park somewhere else. So I walked by the parking lot, and there's basically the front half of a mechanical hippo leaning up against the side of the thing. I'm going, yeah, I like mechanical hippos, and you just walk right by it. It's nothing, I took my kids over there one day. They were out of school for something, and we just walked around, because there was all the New York Street, and there's 2 or 3 New York streets. Part of it was the old RKO Pictures lot. Part of it was the old Paramount lot on Melrose Avenue. But I took my sons and their kids. They were about 6, 7 years old. And we're walking around, and they were doing the Star Trek shows then. So we're walking along, and you look down this alley, and here's 2 of these creatures from Star Trek, and they've got these fangs and these ears and these suits and the guns, and they're like 50 yards away, and they look up at my sons, and these 4 little boys, now they're about that big, and they look, and these creatures walk over to them. And walked right up to him, and the guy pulled his teeth out like that. And my kids just hell. I said, you guys are the greatest guys in the whole wide world because you understand.
Well, they knew what a thrill it was for the kids to see that.
Yes, it was, and I loved Hollywood. I love Hollywood now. I mean, I understand that people. There are lots of things about Hollywood that are not so great, but I never liked reality very much. So I really didn't fit in hard news very well.
The old Hollywood, though, which stars would come along like Clark Gable, all those kind of people, and they sustained throughout their career. They were a star.
Right.
Now you're a star for a year or 2, and then you're just gone.
Yeah.
And is that part of the new Hollywood, where people come along and you're good until we get somebody else? Is that the attitude?
I don't think it's so much. The attitude is we need somebody that people are going to watch. They're going to watch, or they're going to listen to, or they're going to follow, and there's so many ways to measure that. There are probably more people measuring whether you're popular or not than there are people actually doing the work. And it's not. I mean, it's a terrible thing because it's not the way it used to be, and I understand that. But it's change, and it's like everything in the newspaper business that you see in Memphis,
gone,
or the radio business that you see in Memphis, or the television business. It's constantly evolving, and it's not an easy thing to understand. But that's in it. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just the way that it is.
There's a show that currently runs, and it's sort of like Entertainment Tonight, but they all sit there in the newsroom and they just talk, which I really like the whole premise of it.
Right.
And they talk about seeing somebody, and then they start talking about them, so it's almost kind of gossipy as opposed to reporter-based. But it's still fascinating how they decide what to cover, who to cover, and what's really going on with them. Is that sort of like the morning, 4:30 in the morning at Entertainment Tonight? You were sitting there throwing ideas out and decide who's going to cover what? And
that evolved, and after I worked at Entertainment Tonight for 9 years, and I went to Access Hollywood, worked there for 14 years, and my job was to find stories. I was a managing editor at both places, and my job find a story that you can tell, Earle Farrell, that your audience is going to pay attention to, and that they're going to be emotionally connected with. That was my job, and that's an expensive thing to do because you've got to hire crews to go shoot them, you've got to fly places to go do them, you've got to find the stories and work them up, and while you're competing with other people. What happened and what you're talking about, to me, is really a matter of economics, that they just decided, when I was at Access, that decision was made. We're not going to do stories anymore. We're going to get experts on the show. We're going to have experts here, and we'll sit and we'll talk and we'll discuss. We'll decide what we want to talk about, and we'll talk about it because it's cheaper. You don't have to go shoot it. You don't have to cut it. You don't have to do anything. You just have to have you and I talking about whether, so-and-so's halftime show at the Super Bowl was good or whether it was terrible.
And you got stock footage of all these people. You just show their picture.
That's right.
Well, which is what Fox and all the rest of them are doing now.
Right.
You just call in experts. Those are your chain of experts that they come in and comment on it, and whether it's a Zoom. The other thing is Zooming. I mean, you used to have to do a satellite with a live truck or fly somebody in, and now if you got a cell phone, then we can do an interview.
Yeah. Oh, and you think how much COVID changed things. COVID changed the world, and it's in the technology. A lot of what we're doing, the reason that we're doing it is because of the technology. It's not the technology helping us do it, although it is, but it's because we have the capacity to do it this way instead of the expensive way. And it's about money, unfortunately, because it's the more the internet saps the advertising markets and the advertising budgets, then the less money that the TV stations make, and the less money the newspapers make. They have to figure out a way to keep working, or they can't keep hiring people to do the jobs. It's a hard situation we're in right now.
What was it that made you finally, after all those years in L.A., and you were a successful managing editor of two of the biggest entertainment shows ever to come out, what was it that finally said, I'm ready to go back home again? Was it the lifestyle, just living in L.A., or was it?
I was tired of it. I wasn't tired. I just didn't want to do that kind of work anymore. And I had gotten to the point where I was, 20 years older than anybody else in the place. And I had done, I felt like I'd done everything a lot of times and just didn't want to do it anymore, and I wanted to live a different way. And this was home to me. I've got really good friends here. I've got a brother here, and, my kids were grown and out of the house, and I just thought, it's certainly a lot more affordable. And I've always loved Memphis. Memphis. I was born in Memphis, and so I wanted to come back here for that reason, although I didn't know what I was going to do. And because the only thing I knew was that I didn't want to do that anymore. And people say, well, you got to talk about it. I said, no, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to be, back when that time I met Sylvester Stallone, I didn't want to do that, because I just didn't want to. I want to see what else I could do.
Well, and you still had talent, and you still had your ability to go do stuff. And I've always said that everything takes on a life of its own, which pretty much is what's happened to you.
Right.
Came back here. Willie's one of your big friends, and you guys have collaborated on some stuff. You're writing, you're producing films, you're doing a thing with WKNO, the library channel. So it's not hard for people that have talent and want to work and be involved to find things to do. And have you found that coming back has been even more rewarding than you thought it would be?
Oh, infinitely. And I do want to say, I mean, I think you were a good example, Earl. You were a good example. And we're not going to talk about age here, but you keep working. Why? Because you have talent. Because people want you to. They want to see what you're going to do. They want to hear what you know. And you give it to them, and you still have value. I think there's a lesson in it for people who are 35 years old who think they're old. I think, you know what? We're not old. Not as long as you can think, and as long as you know what a story is, then you can have a job and you can do something meaningful. And you're doing that now. I mean, you're just as much an example of that as anyone I know.
And I think what you're doing, too, what we both found is that if you want to do something, then it's up to you to figure out how to get it done. You've been doing it throughout your whole career. Just you had bosses saying, go do what you did yesterday. And now we know how to get things done. Yeah. I didn't go to anybody else when I wanted to come do the show from here. I went to Hal Lansky, who I've known for 40 years, and said, well, what do you think about this idea? He goes, I love it. And same thing with the Peabody. But that's all built on relationships we've had here in Memphis throughout the years, and the trust factor that comes from doing what you say you're going to do and not doing what you say you're not going to do. And just like with Graceland, I mean, Jack Soden trusts me implicitly today because what I did 40 years ago.
Right. People don't forget.
They don't.
Forget.
Let's talk just a little bit about the shows you're working on with Willie Bearden and some of the things you've already done. You did a whole thing with Willie, did one with Ron Olson on his incredible life. And it's, I think those are stories, and I've always said this, you have to keep retelling the story and also tell people to write a book about your life because somebody's going to if you're big. Yeah. And they're going to tell it their way, not your way.
That's right. Again, you find, or I found, coming back here, and it took me a few years to figure out, what to do. And then I have this friend, this woman whose name is Awi Akhtar. She's a poet. She's 89 years old. And she is Cherokee. Her heritage is Cherokee. And she has written some marvelous poetry. And she had been invited to be on WKNO TV. And she said that we want someone to interview, we want to have your life on record, and you can have anybody you want. And she chose me. And then so I do that, and I come back, and they say, well, what else you got? Well, who else do you know? I said, well, I'll give you some ideas, and we'll go do it. That's how it got started with me. Working over there, and I love working over there. I don't say I work over there. I'm over there, and they turn the camera on, and I talk to people. But I love the work, and as long as they need you, as long as and there's opportunity out there. If you just let's don't worry about how much we're going to get paid for this. Let's see if we can do something good. And that's WKNO and the Library Channel. If you don't mind me talking about the Library Channel for a minute. That's a resource that I think a lot of people are not aware of. It's at WYPL TV and radio. WYPL, your public library, is a television station in the main branch of the public library on Poplar. Yep. They do a series of shows. For about 8 years now, I've been doing a show called Vietnam 360, which is for and about people who served in Vietnam. We've probably done 20 shows. I just did another one recently. Got another one coming up in a couple of weeks. But again, it's just my thought at the time was these guys are at least my age or some of them older. We do not want to get 10 years down the road and go, gosh, I wish we had talked to so-and-so and told that fabulous story about, what happened to them in Vietnam. But they're dead now. Yeah. There's no going back when somebody's dead. You got to get them now. So that was what drove me to start doing this. And then now they came to me recently and said, we want to do a show for the veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan, the longest war America's ever fought. And I said, I will help you start it, but that's not something that I know a whole lot about, but I'm going to help them get started on it.
But
so
you do know veterans.
Yes, I do.
And you face all the same things, no matter what the war is.
Yeah. So we're getting that show off the ground. I don't know when we're going to do the first one. It won't be long. But so if anybody out there is listening and knows veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan, get in touch with Earle, get in touch with me. And, I'm easy to find, George Larrimore. You can find me on the internet. But we're trying to get people, because that's a war in which women took an active role in combat for the first time in American history.
Yep.
It was a war that lasted a long, long time, that people didn't understand, and that the politics involved were much different than they were in Vietnam. So those are stories that we want to tell too. But again, the main thing, and I would say, is just be aware, like you're doing right here today, is be aware of what resources you have, and that you can ask somebody can you sit down in front of my camera and just tell me your story? Then you've got a story. You've got a story that will last forever. 100 years from now, somebody will turn it on, and there you'll be telling stories.
Well, I think it's funny because I have them tell me this. I'll say, I love your story. I love what you've done. And I said, but I'm nobody big. I said, that has nothing to do with it.
No.
It is what you have done in your lifetime to take care of your family, to support yourself, to be a good citizen, and to influence others. And that's the story. Yeah. And those are the examples that I want to portray here and have people sit there and look, well, that's a really interesting story. You don't have to invent something. You don't have to done some big movie. You don't have to be a movie star. Right. You're a person. And every person has a story. I did the show My Favorite Restaurant, and I aired it on Channel 10 for about 8 years. And then I took it, when it aired there, I took it to the Library Channel. They reran it about a dozen times each. Mm-hmm. And those are the resources that I figured out.
Right.
And I think your advice to young people, because there are young people listening right now that think there are no opportunities left. I sit there and go, Boulder Dash.
There are more opportunities than ever. Willie Bearden, you mentioned Willie Bearden a minute ago. Willie and I have been friends for 55 years. In September will be 55 years. And we have done some things together, and we've done a lot of things separately, but we just, not long ago, put an hour-long documentary on WKNO about the town that he grew up in, Rolling Fork, Mississippi, where had a tornado had struck in 2023 and killed 17 people. The day that happened, we were on the phone the next morning going, we have to do this, because the media environment is such that this TV station is not going to come from Jackson to go to Rolling Fork, 60 miles away, to tell that story. We made 16 trips to Rolling Fork just interviewing people who had lost their homes. Again, because we knew that there was an opportunity to do it. We didn't get paid for it, but it doesn't matter. The story got told.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we set out to do then, and one of my proudest accomplishments, because we got it done, And there's more stories than you can imagine, as you know, because you do this all the time. You've got to find people to talk to, and to get stories to tell.
Well, and it is about as we were talking earlier about a career, it's what do you enjoy doing? What do you feel like you're contributing to? And I felt like we got to do things with our careers that millionaires and billionaires have never done, because you have access to the world once you get into the media, or even you're telling stories. You say, this is what I'm working on. Can you help me? And you would be amazed. I've often said you could get in a car and put, I'm making a movie on the side of the car, and go anywhere, and people, once they meet you and you tell them your story, what you're up to, everybody will talk to you. You just got to get the trust factor, because, as you know, the media changed over the years, and we're used to, they'd go, yeah, I'll talk to you. Then it became we ain't saying nothing to you guys.
Right.
And so, but the trust is still there. You just have to reestablish it.
It's hard. It is hard. I went to Britney Spears' hometown one time, which is a little town in the border of Mississippi, Louisiana. And I walked around that place. We were in New Orleans doing something. I said, well, let's go up to Britney Spears' hometown. I wish I could remember the name of the town, but I drove around that town the entire day, and it took all day, and finally got one person to tell me some virtually insignificant, tired story about some little museum that had a picture of Britney Spears in it because they'd been burned so many times.
Yeah.
They'd been told, the reporters, said, "Oh no, we won't do this." And it's like you going into Graceland.
Yeah.
You told them you're not going to go upstairs, and you didn't do it.
Yeah.
Well, those reporters didn't do that, Earl.
No.
They told the people, "Well, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to." And then the first thing you do.
Yeah.
And of course, people don't trust. If you get burned 2 or 3 times, you learn, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where a thing that the media generally, and it's impossible to speak about the media as any kind of a
Whole.
Yeah. The media's got to do a lot better job of getting trust back. And the first way to get trust back is to acknowledge why you don't have it. And that's where we're at, in my view, from a lot of it.
Young people thinking about getting into broadcast, I see them all the time in Memphis now. They're not graduating from college and going to Jackson, Mississippi or Jackson, Tennessee. They're coming to Memphis and Nashville and Indianapolis and in some cases even larger markets. I don't think that's necessarily good. I know it's the pay thing is part of it because they're not paying anybody anything, but we didn't get rich doing this.
Right.
I do think that you need just honest people that want to tell honest stories to go in there, and not to be a star, which so many of them do. I never thought about being a star. I would go, I can't believe they're paying me to let me go out and interview interesting people.
Right.
And so to me, it was just the most incredible job I could have ever had. And I just think that by you continuing to do what you do, that's an example to young people. And I try to do the same thing here because we had a young guy come in from Nashville a couple of weeks ago, and he's got a podcast, some other things he's doing in Nashville. He goes, "I love what you're doing here." He said, "Look at this equipment. This is the best equipment you could buy." And it is.
Yeah.
But when it doesn't cost a 100th of the time what it would cost in the old days. I mean, it's very affordable to do this.
There again, the technology is making a lot of things possible that might not be possible. And there are opportunities out there. It's astounding to me, the stories that don't get told in Memphis, because we really don't have a fully functioning newspaper. We don't really have fully functioning media in a way. People are doing what they can with what they've got.
Mostly
and that's a different thing.
The local media is reacting to what's happened.
Right.
And they're not going out there and inspiring and saying, "Hey, we can do this."
Right.
You're continuing to do what you do, and that's a good thing. And that's one thing this show is about, is meeting people that are out there still making a difference, and you certainly are. And I thank you for coming in and spending some time with us.
It's great. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's wonderful to see you.
Well, I tell you who I'd love to have you back in with is Willie. The two of you on the same show.
We can do that.
Let's work.
We have an act.
Yes,
we can do that.
Ladies and gentlemen, they'll be here all week.
It's just a question of who gets their name first. That'll be the hard part.
We'll let you guys.
I think it's the George and Willie show.
Well, we'll flip a coin, but definitely have you back, George Larrimore. Thank you,
Earle
sir.
Farrell. Thank you.
That is our show for today. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.